Everybody, and welcome to live stream number 28. Happy Monday. It is Monday. It is July 17th, 3 p.m. Eastern here. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join today's live stream. Today's live stream topic is should you break the link? And we're going to talk a little bit about this whole assembly way of working inside of Fusion 360 and how I'm going to show how I prefer to do assemblies, what is all within one file, but then also talking about bringing files inside that is linked and you can break the link and so forth. Now, if you're watching this right now, you're watching the recording because we haven't gotten anybody in. Well, I lied. There's my friend Isaac from Mexico. 30 seconds, and Isaac is here. Appreciate it, Isaac. Thank you so much for joining. And I know that we have a couple of other people trickling in, I'm sure, in a few seconds. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. Down in the description area of this video, you will find my email address. You're more than welcome to send me an email with any future topics you would like to see. So like I said, today we're going to talk about components and about assemblies, bringing components inside an assembly, breaking the links, and so forth. And you will also see down in the description area that I left a link to a previous video I did called Get a Grip on Components, Bodies, and Assemblies. And I'll definitely recommend that after this live stream you take a look at that video because hopefully that will clear a bunch of things up if you're brand new to this whole way to do assemblies inside of Fusion. What is a little bit different from if you're coming from, I call it an older system, like Inventor or SolidWorks or something like that. I can see we already got a bunch of people in here. Richard is in here. We got Jacob in here. Andrew from Australia. We got Germany. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. And it's Monday. I hope you guys had a great weekend. We surely had good weather here and got to fire up the grill, so that's awesome. Texas is here. Hey, Bruce and Dylan. Appreciate it, guys. So let's jump in and talk a little bit about assemblies. And I want to talk about how I prefer to do assemblies inside of Fusion 360. So I just have a blank document in here. And the way I prefer to do assemblies is actually just doing it all inside of one file. Maybe I should just kind of like set this up a little bit. If you have used a older system, CAD system, back in the early days of CAD, everything happened inside of a part model, right? That was where you created your sketches. And model up your part. Well, it didn't take very long in the CAD world because before people started saying, well, we need to assemble things into our assemblies. So the way that the CAD companies dealt with it was that they created then assembly files. So you had CAD files that was a single component, and then you got assembly files where you could stick those part files into. But of course, in the continued development, even if you're using older systems, you now can do what in many places called in-content modeling. And that's kind of like what Fusion does, and Fusion does really well. So the way I prefer to do assemblies is to do it all within one file. And the really power about that, or why I think I prefer to do it, is because we always, whenever you got to model something up, if you got to model something up that's going to be an assembly, you're thinking of the end result, right? You're thinking of, like, I don't know, to come to mind, a chainsaw. If you had to model up a chainsaw, you're not thinking each component, you're thinking the whole thing packed together. So doing everything inside of one assembly is a lot easier than model each part up individually and then bringing it into an assembly file. Now, of course, in some instances you have to, like if you're, maybe your customer is giving you certain files or vendors giving you a certain file, they have to go into that assembly. So I'm not saying you should never use where you're bringing parts in to an assembly, but if you're starting from scratch, starting inside of one part and just work from there is at least my preference. So the way you do that inside of Fusion is you can right click up on the single component if you know it's going to be an assembly, and you can say you want to create a new component, and then you get the new component in here. Now there's a little fish eye, I call it, so that will show you what is active. So if I go up on the assembly up here, now the whole assembly is active. And by the way, when I created this component part, notice how we got like a little assembly icon up here, the icon to change. Now inside of this component, I'm going to make it active. I'm just going to model something up quick. This is not, I'm not trying to impress you with my modeling skills in this live stream. I'm going to hit the S key. I'll do that in another one. I'm going to set a center rectangle, and I'm just going to sketch up a rectangle here, 3 by 3 inches. And I'm also going to hit C for circle, and also just blow a hole right through this one. And with that, I can hit Q, and then half-inch thick. Boom, there is one component. So what is nice about this is that I can now create multiple components within here. So if I go up and I right click up here, and I can create a new component, and that new component now gets its own icon. Now, by the way, I prefer actually to name my components. That's a good idea. So we're going to call the first one, the one we just created here, we're going to call that the base, and then we can activate the next component, and maybe we just rename it before we do anything else, call the rod, and let's just go ahead here and create that here. So I'm just going to hit C for circle, and I'm actually also going to make that one 1 inch, same height as before. Tolerances is another thing we're going to talk about very soon in these live streams. That is one of the other questions. But now we have two components within our assembly in here, right? So we got the base and we got the rod. So one file, now when I hit save up here, that's going to be one file that maintains two components in here. Now, with that, we can save these components out of the assembly if we want to. So if we wanted to use these components other places, we definitely can. So all we really have to do is right click, and then we can go in and say we're going to save copy as. So this is like, same idea as like if you're working in Windows or something like that. Save copy as means normally that we are kind of like breaking the link, right? So I'm just going to rename this one to base. So we are saving the base out of our assembly, not referencing back. This base by itself, if I open it up here, this base by itself is literally just as if it was a part file. And you actually look, if you look inside of it here, it looks just like if you had sketched it up in its own part file. Here's the sketch and everything as we had done it. We can do the same thing if you go back to my original assembly here. We can do the same thing with the rod. We can right click and we can say copy as, and I can rename that one too, just so we keep it a little bit straight. And we have now saved the two components out of here as individual components. We can open that one up. But the way of doing where you create the components right in here and then create the parts in here is definitely my preferred solution when I have that option. And I'm saying that like when I have that option, because like I said, you don't always have that option, and it's not always either the best thing. Like I just created that video series with the plastic injection mold. So if you go to the videos, you will find that video series, and if you click down in the description area of that one, you can actually download the entire data set. That whole plastic injection molds is yours to do with whatever you want. And you will see in there that I'm actually using these linking functions also. So there's definitely places to use it. But before I started talking about breaking links and linking components, I just want to make sure that I showed you kind of like, that's my preference, is to build it all within one file. Now, with that said, jump back into Fusion here. If I now start a so right now I have the one I originally did here, and now I have opened up the two individual components saved outside. Oops, saved outside with the. How should I say it? I saved these two out from here, right? That's where these two files comes from, and they are not associated right now. There's no association. If I go in and I change the dimensions of this one, you will not see that change here. When you do a save as, you're breaking the link. Okay, I'm going to open a new document, a new design. So this is a blank new component. Now, to bring files in, you do have to save it first. So I'm just going to hit save and say assembly. If I did not do this, I will get a warning that will tell you that. So I'm just going to call this assembly. So now what you can do is you can bring files in to this empty document, or there could be things in here. That's, and the way you do that is you right click here on the file and you say insert into current design. So if I do that, insert into current design, you will see that our base gets brought in. Now when you bring in this component, you will see that the move copy dialog appears, and this is definitely another live stream coming up soon where we're going to talk about this one. The only thing that you should know about this is it gives you an opportunity to place it. The way it comes into Fusion is in the same way it was created. So meaning, depending on what faces you sketched on and so forth, that's how it's going to be brought in. In this case here, I'm just going to say okay, and now that base is brought in. Now you will see that there is a chain link here, and that is telling me that this component is referenced from this other file out here. Now I'm going to bring the rod in also, so I'm going to right click, insert into current design, and we will see that now the rod is brought in. And again, I get this move copy dialog box. Another live stream, I promise you. Hit OK, and now that is brought in here. So really what we have right now in this assembly over here is the same as we had in the first one I created, right? The only difference is that in this assembly, the first one, all the components were created and lived within that assembly. Now, in this assembly really don't right now have any files inside of it per se by itself. It looks out at these two other files, the base and the rod, to assemble this part in here. Now, what that does is that I cannot modify these files in here right now because, like I said, the files really don't reside in here. They live in their individual CAD files out here. I hope this makes sense. If you're fairly new to CAD, this is not easy. Now, if you've done CAD for years, you probably, this is like riding a bicycle, but this is actually, kind of a little a little overwhelming maybe if you're brand new. But that's really what we have done. We have brought them in by right-clicking out here and said insert into current design, and that means that they are linked in here. Now, so these files here could be files, the rod and the base could be some that somebody else had created at some point, right? That it could be a vendor. Let's go back to the chainsaw. Maybe you got the chain from a one website, and you got the case or the motor somewhere else. You can all bring it inside and assemble it in here. Nothing wrong with this. This is just more like what I would call the old style of doing CAD. So now took a little while, but we got to the kind of the topic of the day. Should you break the link? So that's one of the questions is what you can do in here. You can actually break the links. So if I go right now without breaking the links, if I, for example, want to change this base, like I said, I can't do anything with these components. They're just referenced in here. But if I go into the base itself, so here's the part file by itself, and let's go into the sketch, and edit that sketch. Whoops, if you can hit the button, Lars. It is Monday. So let's go in here and make it, twice as long, right? We just got a phone call from the customer saying, oh, we're changing the size of the space. I stop the sketch, and then inside of Fusion, I will now save my change here. And you should always leave a comment. Like this, wider, I don't know. So we saved this one here. Now everything is good at this point. And just to, if we go back to the first part we had in here, my original model, you will see nothing have changed in here, because when I did that save as, it broke the link, right? Remember that? When I went in here and I said right click, save copy as, I broke that link. So the base is now wider. Now if we go over to our assembly over here, you will actually see that I get these warnings. Now these warnings are not, nothing is broken at this point. But as you can see, we get a message that there's one component here that is out of date. Because Fusion is smart enough that inside this assembly, it knows that the original version over here just got changed. And it says, hey, do you want to change that? Now, and I say, do you want to change that? Because just want you to keep in mind, as fire trucks are driving by outside, this is just a warning. This is just a warning. Just because your original part changed, you don't have to call the fire department. It's not that bad. There can actually be cases where the original part gets changed where you choose not to update. Just saying. So whenever you see this yellow flag, it tells you that the original part that is linked back to has changed. It's just giving you that information. It's not saying that you have to. Just giving you that, I don't know, little, think about it. So, but if I go ahead and I click components out of date, let me click this icon, you will see that now Fusion is going to update the part, and now everything is up to date. The warning is gone. It actually shows us over here too that the version have changed, and version is maybe something we should talk about in a live stream too. So this is how this works right now. If you gotta make any changes into this assembly, you will have to go out to the individual components and change them out here because they're linked. So you can actually break the link, and that can actually be kind of handy at times to do that. So we model up this base here, and we wanted to use it in this assembly, but now we actually want to do some extra things to that component. Think about that maybe this part here was one we created as a stock, and we have different variations of this base later on. We want to do some other things to it. Then breaking the link is perfectly all right. Now you don't always have to break the link. If these two components is what drives my assembly, and I know that they are as they are supposed to be, I'm not going to break the link. But if I know that in this specific assembly in here, I am going to make changes, yes, then I will right click on the component, and right down here you will see that it will let you break the link. And as soon as I click on that, that component here now lives inside of that assembly. And actually right now, that's the only component that lives inside of that assembly, right? Because the other one is, the rod is still referenced. And if you look at this component, you will now see as soon as I broke it, I get that fish eye, just like I had in my original one. And if I click down here, it's kind of like packed together in a group. You will even see the sketch resides in here. So now this base is pretty much the same as the original one I did in the beginning. That when we break that link, now it lives within there. So if I wanted to do certain changes to this part now, I can make it active, and I could now go in and, for example, well, maybe we want to add some chamfers to this part, right? So now we can go in and we can add some chamfers to the top here. Do that, whatever we kind of like want to apply here, 100,000 chamfer, right? And I can again save this assembly like that. And we have now added that, but that only resides inside of this assembly. If I go back to the base file, you will see that it has not. So that's kind of like how this whole thing works. Now, one of the questions I got was, well, if I break if I broke the link on the base, what if I want to relink it in here? Well, I hope till this point it kind of like have made a little bit more sense that when we broke the link, we actually made a copy that is now residing inside of that assembly file, right? So when you do a link file into an assembly, the assembly don't have any files. It's looking right out at that part file sitting out here. But as soon as we break that link, it makes a copy that is in here and the association is now gone between the two. Okay, so now you actually have a file inside of that assembly. If you want to relink that part, this part, the one that was already in there, then you have to bring it out and bring it in. Now, if you want to relink this part here, the original one, let's say that we just decided that that the part we just put the chamfers on actually was not what we want. We actually want to go back to where we were before. Well, there's a couple of ways to do that. One, of course, as some people will say, is we could go in here and we could start looking at versions and bring things back. But I think that's another discussion. If I decided that this chamfer one here, I don't want this part in here, I actually want back to having this one linked in, well, then in theory, you could grab this one, you could, I guess, delete it out of here, and then you could go back to the base and say insert into current design, and we're kind of back to where we were before, that now this one is again in here, and if we make a change to the base, just like we did before, go back into that scats, let's make the other one 6 inches, so now we actually have a 6x6. We started out by a 3x3, and I should have renamed it, bad on my part. If we go back in here, you will see now we are back to that base is linked in here, and we'd have to click that update to get that in. So I hope that this kind of makes sense. This is kind of like how it works, and I know that sometimes this can be a little bit difficult to watch these live streams and then try to make it work with what you're working on, because you're sitting looking at something completely different, right? I say chainsaw, and you are actually trying to put something completely different together, right, in a whole other world. But I hope that this kind of makes sense on how it works. So if you're starting out from scratch and you don't have anything, I recommend that right inside of your start file, you create components in there by right-clicking up on the top and create your components, because now you have everything within, all the components within one file. They all live in there. It's a lot easier to kind of like manage and everything, because we're thinking in assemblies anyways. Like I said earlier, the chainsaw, right? If you have to model up a chainsaw, you're not thinking of each component individually. You're thinking of the whole chainsaw together. But it's important to know how these linked components works, and you're definitely using them. Again, like I said, if you go to the mold tutorial I made, I brought a bunch of components in from a vendor. So all the sprue, the injector pins, there was a bunch of components that I brought from a vendor that I had to bring into the assembly, and they were all brought in as links. And then I broke the links as I was modifying them, as I was making them specific to the assembly. Then I broke the link. All right, I hope that makes sense. couple of things. Don't forget, down in the description area, there is the video to there's a link to the video I created on how to get a grip on your components, bodies, and assemblies. If you're brand new, if this is all brand new information and your head is spinning a little bit, definitely recommend that you're watching that one. Also, the CNC Handbook is down there. The link is still down there for your free one. That's not going to go away. So down in the description area is the free CNC Handbook. You can grab that one. And my email address if there's any future topics here. Let me just quickly check the chat in here and see we got a bunch of people in here. Let me just see that that there's no specific questions in here. I can see we got Czech Republic in here. We got a bunch of people. Question: does it work with bodies? It does not. Well, that is perfectly cool to talk about. Let's go back into to Fusion here because hey, this is live. We might as well talk with this. So, what I did in the beginning, right, was I created these each components as they really would be in real life. Now, bodies. So let me open up a new design in here. If I don't create a new components, if I did not right click up here and say create new components, but just went ahead and started sketching right in here right now. So let's do the center rectangle, 3 by 3, and let's put the circle in here, 1 inch circle. Let's hit Q and extrude that up a 1/2 inch. This is now one body by itself sitting in here. Now I could absolutely go in and create a new sketch in here, and I could select the sketch plane. I could hit another circle, do another 1 inch, and then I can 1 inch diameter. And then when I hit Q, here's an interesting thing. When I extrude this one up, you get an option over here in the extrude. If I select join right now, this is just going to be one body. It's just going to merge it together. It's just be one body. But I do have an option in here to say new body. And if I click on new body and hit OK, you will actually see that I get 2 bodies in here. And so that is, you could say, somewhat close to my first option in here, right? To components. What is the big difference in here? Well, the big difference is that bodies only lives within a part. They don't live within assemblies. So an assembly means you have multiple components, right? So with bodies, you don't. So they will only live in here. And you cannot bring one body in to another body and have them linked. Bodies, and there's a couple of other things just so you know, like I'm thinking on top of my head here. If you, for example, created an assembly drawing where you wanted a table, like a cut list, if you use bodies, then it will not they will not show in the cut list either. It has to be components. Also, if you got to do stuff like different type of material specs on there, that would have to be components. So I think that what I'm getting at is that working with bodies is, I only really work with multiple bodies when that makes sense. And that doesn't make sense if I'm creating an assembly like a chainsaw. That will be different components, and I would probably stay away from using bodies. I hope that kind of like makes sense. But that was an awesome questions. Maybe that's another live stream we got to talk about. Send me an email about that if we got to get more into what you can do with bodies versus components. Good question. All right. So one of the questions is, what is the best way to handle large assemblies, and should I put sub assemblies in one file and then make the top level assembly a link and everything together? Yes. So I'm coming up on the half an hour, so I'm going to wrap that up. That's going to be the last question. That is a great question, and actually also another live stream topic could be definitely large assemblies. But let me just touch on it here quickly. Yes, I would definitely break things down to sub assemblies. So, and the reason for that is that if you think about like a large assembly, and I always think it's interesting when you ask people what is a large assembly. Some people will tell you that a large assembly is 100 components, right? Like, how many components are there actually in a chainsaw? I don't know, 100, 200 components. Other people will tell you that a large assembly is, thousands of components, right? Think about like your car. If you go out there, every single button on the radio is a component, right? Like every single, just think about how many components there is in an engine or something. So the bigger these assemblies becomes, the more the software has to solve, because it's got to kind of like keep track of all these components. So if you're breaking down your parts into sub assemblies, that makes it easier for the software to kind of like to not have to solve everything in a linear basis. Sometimes when you are when CAD software is solving, many times, it's almost like a cake. Like one item gets solved one at a time. Just like when you're baking a cake, you put all the wet ingredients in, then you're putting the dry ingredients, so it's the other way around. But then, you definitely do all those things before you put anything in the oven. So everything kind of following a way. And when you're working with large assemblies, it definitely makes sense to break it down to sub-assemblies. All right, I hit the half an hour. I hope that this was a good topic. I definitely appreciate the question, and I hope that this kind of made sense. As always, love your feedback on this. If you like these live streams, hit the thumbs up. If you don't, I don't care. Let's be honest. Hit the thumbs down. And I'm going to do like I normally do. I'll hit the stop the streaming. That means that you guys who are watching the recording, as I really appreciate you do, that you get a chance to go and do something else, get a cup of coffee or whatever, and I'll get back to work, I guess. And I will jump into the live stream chat and chat with people in there. Tomorrow. I got to talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow's live stream is at noon, so 3 hours earlier than this one was, noon Eastern. And I got a good question from a guy who was asking, why are you never using the align tool? You're also always using joints. Why not using align? So let's talk about the align tool tomorrow and how that works versus using joints. Guys, really appreciate you taking the time to join here. Until the next time, have an awesome, awesome day.